Glad to be here with all of you. Almost missed this because of the traffic in San Francisco, but I'm glad I made it. Um, and yeah, well, this is a very relevant topic. As you know, balancing growth and fraud losses is always a challenge. So we have great speakers here joining us. Um, Dolly from Swiggy is the second largest food delivery company in India, and they also have operations in the quick shopping space. Super big company. Um, we have also Alejandro Stein, was from Rappi. Rappi is one of the leading food delivery and logistics platforms in Latin America. And we also have Gustavo from iFood, which is the leading food delivery platform in Brazil. I'll let them briefly talk about themselves and what they do in each of these companies, and then we can get started with the subject. Dolly, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, André, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Good morning, and glad to be here. Glad to share thoughts, and I think my intent is to learn from all of you. It's a very developing space, and I would say that the entire marketplace ecosystem, right? It's evolved, and pandemic in some form has been a silver lining that has boosted the adoption, the digital adoption, and the penetration of these services. So yeah, I mean, as a quick introduction, I had assurance and business advisory service at Swiggy, and that includes trust and safety as a charter. Look forward to talking about the topic and exchanging notes with all of you. Over to
Alejandro?
Andre.
Hi, how are you? Um, I worked for many years in banks, then in a big travel agency in Latam, and until a couple of weeks I was at Rappi, food delivery. And from my experience, what I can tell, and I've been involved in payments, fraud, and many other things from an operations point of view, but it's when you start thinking about the evolution of the different verticals, marketplace brings a number of degrees of freedom that make it really complex, right? And so I think in the payments and the fraud, it makes it really exciting, and I hope that I can help at least enlighten or share our experiences of what it means, right, to try to deliver a good customer experience at the end of the day and help grow the business, because we're trying to put fences to prevent the bad actors, but at the same time, it's a very sensitive trade-off about how you help the good ones, right, have a good customer experience. And at the end of the day, this is a business of commodity, right? So you order your coffee. If I don't sell to you, you're gonna go to the next provider, and if that happens, you will not come back probably. So hope we can have that discussion.
Awesome. Gustavo?
Hello, Gustavo Cruz from Brazil. As I mentioned, really glad to be here and speaking with that audience. Computer engineering were great, so technology is a strongness that I've carried on fraud prevention on my career. I've been starting my career with financial services, but then moving from health insurance, e-commerce, loyalty as well, and finally now with food delivery, trying to combine all the best experiences and the best practices that I've collected during my career and actually applying them on a combination on results, performance, fraud prevention, and actually customer experience as well, because iFood has an additional challenge, which is inside our vertical. We are based on the CX vertical, so we are always trying to have this balance between fraud prevention, performance, and customer experience. So I hope that I could share this with you properly and have a really nice conversation.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with a very broad question around how important the promo abuse problem is when it comes to balancing growth and fraud losses. Would you like to start?
Sure, Andre. So I think promo is a technique to get users on the platform, and the more number of users you have, the higher interactions that you have with the users. You create a flywheel effect, which actually creates growth for the organization. So user acquisition is important. Promo is important to get the users on the platform. And if there is an abuse happening in this domain, it becomes very critical to solve for it and make sure that you just have the genuine users on the platform. So from a strategy perspective, it's super important. But from the biggest challenge perspective, I think promo abuse is an area where it is very difficult, if I may say, if you do not have the right techniques it's very difficult to really ascertain what is the impact of the abuse. And in absence of that, it gets camouflaged as a cost of doing business. So it's very important to segregate what is the cost of abuse or what is the cost of fraud versus your real cost of doing business. And hence, what's your real cost of acquisition? So from a strategy perspective, it hence forms a part of the key growth initiatives that a company would be looking at, and hence very important for you to have the right guardrails, because while you get more users on the platform and you build guardrails, you don't really want to churn users away by having a blunt axe approach. Yeah. Over to you, Alexandre.
Yeah, I think promo abuse, it's interesting because it is big, but there are like a lot of underlying issues which has to do with how the company is organized and how incentives are set. Usually people in the fraud area are on one side trying to like chasing what we don't like to be stolen, right? So we have that mindset, right, about catching thieves. And on the marketing side, you have people that are just, no matter what, you want to drive and recruit customers. So the first thing that happens, and it happens a lot to us in Rappi, is that the internal power struggle is big, right? So I think if you don't have strong alignment right at the top of the house, it's very difficult. And then second is that it's difficult to quantify because it depends how you are going to measure it, right? And the other thing that happens with promo abuse is depends not only new customers but existing customers that you want to reactivate, right? And what are the different promos like? Because also the promos are decentralized. One thing is to do like, okay, two for one or 20% discounts, or then you have like free delivery. Who is giving the free delivery, right? Or like if you're doing Netflix 30-day free subscription. So we have subscription business, things like that. They're all managed by different. And what you don't realize is that most of people are managing at the account level. So they don't see it, right, from a P&L point of view. So it's promo abuse. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of alignment, right, to make sure that you measure it and then you size it. When we did it, we realized that it was big. Though, when you go and talk to the marketing guys, if you're managing, I don't know, let's say $150 million in marketing budget and suddenly promo abuse maybe 2 or 3, like based on the velocity of what's going on, they don't get it, right? So it doesn't become, so it depends. And then you can reinvest that in the right ones and then try to close some doors. So it's a big issue, and it's a mindset and organizational issue as well.
Yeah, for us, promo abuse was difficult on the very beginning on defining it. How do you define what's promo abuse? If we made this question here, we're gonna have a ton of different questions, a ton of different answers actually, and we spend a lot of money trying to define it, because what is successful for marketing in a look of a campaign consumption, a budget consumption, is not what we as fraud preventer actually sees. So promo abuse took us more than 3 months, only internal alignment, as Alejandro says, for defining it and actually closing the problem. And then after we have that, trying to combat this with the technology and the strategies that Dolly has mentioned. So for us, promo abuse became a major problem a year ago, and for the past 6 months we are dedicated on trying to solve this problem as well. And we've implemented a really nice measure that took us a longer time to define and to share, to spread the idea, which is waste avoidance. Actually, we are wasting money on bad campaigns, bad customers, and this was the major key change on our conversation on marketing. If we understand that the money that you are actually investing is wasted, and you could apply that money in a different cluster and different consumer segmentation, this will bring the market team together with the risk team. So if you could implement for us at iFood the waste avoidance concept, this brings a little bit help on promo abuse combating as well.
And one thing I would like to add that just came to my mind is the thing that you take a look at. It's a lot of time that happens because the campaign is not well designed, right? So if you're in marketing and you want to take some promotions because you are short on sales or growth targets, you design campaigns that are not very thoughtful designed. And that's where fraud comes in, to just put some controls into it. But if the marketing campaign was well designed and well thought, usually you will minimize this, but usually it doesn't happen.
Awesome. Great points. Yeah, before jumping into the next question, I just wanted to comment that the alignment between like marketing, growth, and the fraud prevention team is really the key here, because as Gustavo said, like defining this is already a challenge, right? And sometimes you're looking at different metrics, right? So you might be like the marketing team might be looking at things like customer acquisition costs, and they might be looking at it. Oh, yeah, this campaign didn't have a very good customer acquisition cost, et cetera. But in fact, like a big part of that may be results of promo abuse and fraud, right? Another thing is customer retention, right? Like how do you measure these new accounts over time? Like, are they sticky? Are they like remaining on your platform, or are they just like using one or two like coupons, for example, and going away, or potentially creating another account, right? So this is a real challenge, in making sure that you're talking the same language and measuring the right things is really critical. So getting into my next question here, like how do you balance growth and fraud prevention efforts? This seems to be quite challenging.
Yeah, but I think you've already answered that, Andre. So I think you mentioned about retention metrics, right? And I think that is what it is. Very often, especially marketing teams, because you have conflicting OKRs or KRs, right? One is fraud prevention, trying to bring costs down, and the other is acquisition. So I think, and they may not be very appreciative of what's really happening, and they may not even be aware of, whether the size of the problem is so big. So I think some of the things that really help is industry benchmarks. Right, in terms of how or what is really happening in this space. That's one. Second is country-specific parameters. Now, in a case like for us in India, it's just duopoly, right? We have Swiggy and Zomato, and it's very difficult to get what is the right benchmarks. So you carry or you learn from what's really happened in other countries globally, and figure out how big or small the problem is. And like what Andre said, at times it's important that you show the mirror. So it's important that you maybe do it on for a smaller scale of business, where you really understand how your metrics are being impacted. And we have done this, and we really found initially there was a lot of resistance that we found from the marketing teams and the growth teams, but then the teams could demonstrate the impact. So without having the right kind of technology solutions to really identify good users versus bad users, we had an X rate of repeat or retention. And typically you look at a 30-day repeat, 30-day retention, 60-day retention, 90 days. And versus once we deployed these technologies and we saw a 2x or whatever that number is, we saw a significant jump in our retention, and that really helped the team, because they were able to reinvest the money. The point that my colleague mentioned on waste avoidance, I think you're able to now reinvest the money to good users, and also drive better retention again. And I think one example that I would also say is typically we limit ourselves to say, okay, it's more about, just the user's ability to interact on the platform. But I think it also has a lot of ripple down effect, because your courier partners, they do understand that it's an abuse, and, they are able to, they don't really have much appreciation for an organization which is not able to control the abuse. Similarly, from a supply perspective, if your item goes out of stock because suddenly somebody has ordered 100 packets of milk and there's no milk, you're actually having your genuine users getting out of stock. And this also impacts your demand and supply forecast, because you have machine learning models which are running on this basis. So yeah, it has a ripple effect, and definitely a cost impact from here. So in terms of growth and balancing between growth and experience, I think what we really need to do is we need to show the metric, and that is what will speak. The data, nothing else talks better than data. So I think you really need to show data to be able to sell your business case.
Excellent.
Okay. I think that it depends. Like that balance depends a lot of the context of what's going on, right? Because as a business, you may have different pressure, right? So let's say that you're coming from last quarter or a couple of quarters with big losses, or you have a P&L issue. I can tell you're going to have one pressure, right? If you are not meeting your growth goals, you're going to get other pressure. But the way, so it will change. It will be very dynamic. And I will distill it to the balancing that act around how, as an organization, you integrate, right? Because usually what I found is the fraud people, right, have a particular mindset, as I said, and they are very silo, right? Usually they are managing right in that corner, right? Nobody knows them, these strange guys, right? And that the guys are, hey, they are always like the negative guys, right? So they're saying, hey, always saying no, right? They don't understand. And so the things is, I think, has to do a lot with organizational design or building a relationship, right? So when the counterpart trusts you, right? So building that relationship ahead of time. So when you have the conversation, you can go and sit without having biases, right? I happen a lot with marketing, right? So my counterpart of marketing, we had a great relationship. And when I said, guys, they are eating your lunch. Trust me. And the analysts below him, they're just driving campaigns, right? And feeding him with a very different data. Seriously. And look, data you can massage in the way you want, right? If you're smart enough to figure it out, right? So the point is, becomes the trust and having an honest conversation to see how we're going to work it together and what it's acceptable. So what my advice to anybody is build those relationships, try to help from a culture point of view, help even the fraud people also understand that, hey, the marketing guys have an objective. Look, if they don't grow, we don't get paid either, right? So let's be very clear. So we need to do our job to make sure that we protect the company, but at the same time, we need to help. So that balance has to do with relationship and also what you said. Benchmark becomes our third stage, right? It's data, showing the data. This is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Why are we looking at differently? And then trying to align. Takes time. Because even the experiments you need to do, like the marketing people have short-term goals. Usually the retention is measured by other teams, not by marketing, right? So it will be someone on the business side versus marketing. So then you end up fighting. So that trust allows you to build plans that are like measured like 3 months or 6 months and knowing that, okay, by the dialogue, it drives you to the right place. And then benchmarks is to make sure that you are not looking to yourself, right? At the end of the day, hey, how good we are. No, you suck. That's the truth, right? So making sure that we can have that dialogue. So, but my advice is break the silos, build relationships, and bring data in an honest way. And if it's not complete, say it. It's not complete. This is what I'm missing. How do we work it out to make it complete? Otherwise, you will not build that trust.
Yeah, I do believe that in a daily basis level, operational level, we have data science people making the CRM work and making the fraud prevention work, which really close profiles, so they understand each other problems. But in a strategical level, we try to define and actually translate what are the goals, what are the objectives for marketing, and what are the objectives and the pain points for fraud prevention. And as Ale has mentioned, create a relationship, a confidence relationship where we share the same goals. For at least just for 1% of your results, you should have a cross goal with the marketing team. This brings us the obligation to understand it, understand the problem, help them to define it. So not only for a payment, for a bonuses level, but actually not forcing, but how can I say, making them a really strong team with strong communication, with crossing goals, helping us to balance what are our problems, what are their problems, what are the company goal, and how we work together on balancing between the growth and the fraud losses. But just a little last thought that I came here. What is growth? Once more, what is the definition of growth, and what is the company objective with growth? We are trying to grow on new customers. We're trying to grow on average payment amount. We're trying to grow in number of orders. it is not clear to everyone in your company what is the goal on growing. And once we share that with everyone is actually moving from the same side to the same objectives. This is helpful. Growth in on what? Defining that is a major key to have success balance between the growth and the losses.
I'll just add to what my colleague said, right? I think this is super critical. And I think what is really important is to make sure that the way we have done it is while business teams are accountable in terms of achieving the profitability and the overall goals, we are responsible to make you succeed. And the moment you have that kind of conversation, and say that, okay, while you're accountable, I'm responsible here to deliver this goal for you, it becomes a co-owned goal, like what you just said, right? And that helps you to drive a lot many initiatives and at a much faster rate is what I can tell you. And what we've also done is, I'm sure while we are discussing promo, but we find abuse patterns across, whether it's on the courier side or whether it's in India, we have a lot more orders on cash. So whether it's cash on delivery, etc. So we have a scorecard, and that scorecard is actually, it has growth matrix, it has unit economic matrix and stuff like that, and where we co-own it along with the business teams and we review it along with business teams. So that helps you, that breaks the silo, builds the trust, and make sure that you're winning as one team rather than, two different teams running towards a different goal.
And the other thing, André, which is tricky as well, is whose money is that, right? Because when you look at like your fraud, preventing promo abuse, at the end of the day, market is money, right? So what you are making a decision there is that, okay, I don't know, let's say we are working with Incognia. We are subscribing to the service, to the capability, to use it. It has a cost. It has resources from the fraud team. You are preventing it. The question is, how much credit are you going to get for it? Seriously, how much credit? So the question then becomes is how smart you are within the organization to mobilize because it's the right thing to do and because you feel like an owner, right? So it belongs to your company, right? But not necessarily, and your score will show up very easily, right? So partnering with finance as well, right? To make sure that how you account for that, how you make it accountability for the results, and then manage your budget because your boss is going to tell you, okay, come on. You need to reduce cost. What do I reduce? Okay, promo abuse, I could care less, right? Because it's driving me cost up and I'm not getting credit, but it's the wrong thing for the company. How you manage that? So it is, my point is, it's a problem and it's so diluted and fragmented that sometimes the company is the one that loses, but individually, right, people are not held accountable for it as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and before we jump into best practices here, like one small tip I have for like people in the risk and fraud space is that usually we are recognized within the company as like the boring people, right? Like people that only bring like the bad news. So one tip I have here is try to frame these things as opportunities for growth, right? So instead of saying like, oh, we're losing X million of dollars every month with promotion abuse, you can just reframe it as I found an opportunity to improve our customer acquisition cost by X%, and this will lead to this many dollars in additional growth, right? So it's the same data, but you can frame it in a different way, and you might change how you are perceived within the organization. So deciding like how do you communicate these things is really important. So you establish trust and build relationships with the other teams. So the next topic here is around best practices. All of the three here had a lot of experience like thinking and going through all of these challenges. So I wanted to ask for you to share like one or two things that you believe are relevant and your peers here can apply to their businesses.
Sure. I think I would split it up into two parts. One is, solving the particular problem. And I think I echo what André said. And the way we look at ourselves is not like a cost center, but a profit center. right? And the moment you're able to position yourself as a profit center, and the moment we don't call ourselves as a fraud prevention team while we are doing that. We call ourselves as business advisory, because the moment you call yourself as business advisory, the perception that brings about is, your business partners. So you're thinking business and, shouldering their responsibilities. So I think one is how you position yourself in the org. That becomes very important. That's one. And from a strategy perspective, in terms of solving the problem, I think there are two parts to it. Leveraging AI, or I would say technology, in the right way. And I think what gets super critical, Andre, and you are an expert in this, is how do you look at the right quality of signals, right, which are able to help you differentiate between a genuine user and a bad user. And that's super important. And one of the challenges that we have gone through in that journey is, every time we used to look at integrating a signal A, the question that used to get posed is, it has X number of engineering bandwidth, and this is the time required. So what is the CPU impact, or how do you think it'll really add to the profitability of the company? But I think over a period of time, we realized that the more signals that you have, the sharper your capability is to detect. And the sharper your capability is to detect, you can be more proactive versus being reactive. And hence you can spend, earn more dollars for the company versus doing things reactively. So having the right kind of signals is super important, whether it is, with respect to device, whether it is location, geohash, name. And we have created within Swiggy, thanks to the tech team of Swiggy, right? They've created or supported us and created linkages, account linkages, that help you really establish one-to-many connect or many-to-one connect. And through those connects, we are able to identify in a fair manner or a reasonable manner in terms of bad actors, and that helps us. So if I have to just stick to promo abuse, because promo is something where you're showing a coupon to the customer, and the customer may or may not, customer would use it if he's eligible for it. So if you can protect by not showing the coupons depending upon his score, say for example he's a bad customer and you do not show the coupon to him because you have those signals, that actually helps you to earn that many number of dollars into the company revenue. So that's one. But I think at a larger part of it, it's a combination of the most important part is signals. How do you integrate into models, and then you build rules around it. But the other thing that we also focus on, having the right processes in place, right? Because we need to understand that fraud is a behavior, and it's very important to understand why people do what they do. And are there any weaknesses in your processes which are resulting or driving this behavior? One is definitely on the tech part of it, but the other is process. So how do you build in strong processes which create deterrence? That's super important, and that helps you to reduce the propensity for fraud itself. So we call that HI, and that's a term that I've learned from my co-founder, Harsha, who's a group CEO as well. So I think leveraging AI and HI, specifically in the right, balancing it in the right way becomes super important. So yeah, that's what I would actually call it. In terms of matrix, I think we've discussed. Yeah. Over to you.
Yes, I think the answer, it depends very much of the company. If you're a big company, if you're a small company, right? The answer will be very different what best practice may be. But what I would say that common themes I found. One is, I already said, relationship, right? Making sure that you are not isolated, right? So you can make decisions on a trusted and joint manner. Second thing is, for me, not minimum, and at least I face it in many places, is talent. Don't waste your time, right? Assess your talent. If you don't have the right talent, you're going to be chasing your tail. A lot of time. And it happens, right? So if you don't make that decision, you're going to be burning calories where you shouldn't, okay? So make sure that you are very critical with talent, right? Because the dynamic of fraud changes a lot. You're going to get a lot of things, and then you're going to be questioned as well. You don't know what you're talking about. Third piece is making sure you have a good data set, right? good way of managing data, metrics that everybody understands, right? And the other thing is prioritization. Prioritize. Like, I've seen so many people come with great ideas, so many vendors. You're going to see a lot of vendors even here, right? So you don't have enough resources to test everything. So how you make that decision and stick to it, right? Give it enough time to mature, right? Don't jump from one to the other, right? So do a good analysis, review it. But once you make a choice, like, you will see that if you don't prioritize, it's going to be, and happens a lot. I tell you for experience, right? So those are things, are themes, if you want, like best practice for me. Then I go to the tactical level, the analysis, like what's going to happen, right? Each of you are going to figure out. And if you're a small company, you're going to go buy a package. If you're a large company, you may have a lot of providers where you can customize or configure, or you can do a lot of experiments, things like that. There are going to be a lot of things that it is a way of working. But if you don't solve those themes, it's going to happen 1, 2, or 3 years, and you will find that you did not make progress strategically in order to scale it, right? So again, it depends. I always work for large organizations. So if you're like a startup with couple of people, your solution will be, okay, make sure that you have a good talent guy that knows what's going on, and then look for a vendor to help you as much as you can, right? As you scale, then you will figure out change your strategy, but make sure that those themes at the level that makes sense to you play out.
Yeah, I'll cover PRI, which is an innovative way that we've developed at iFood for promotion, but as a best practice, before even actually having the discovery of our project, the discovery of our new risk indicator, we establish what were false positive rate and how we're going to calculate that. And we share that metric with marketing, with customer experience team, and fraud prevention team. So as a best practice, before defining and actually having the solution of your problem, try to define what is successful, what is fail, how they share this, and how every single one inside this squad, this community, this team understand how the false positive rate are. Because before we started to develop, we spent almost 6 months defining some sort of rocket science false positive rate, but every single meeting that we have, we spent 10 minutes sharing and actually niveling them what this is. How do you understand 5% of false positive rate over 10%, over 1%? And this is helpful because best practice brings us the idea what are the lessons learned on that. And we've suffered developing really strong platform and solutions and not having successful results because people don't understand what the result is. So for us, a combination of best practice, strategy, and even metrics is defining the success before you develop your final product as well.
I'll just add one more point to this. I think the way the verbiage that we've coined is 3 Ps, which is people, process, and product. So when you're creating your strategy, just make sure, from a people perspective, one is, again, you break it down into internal, which is how are you looking at internal talent, and you break it down into external. How are you looking at comms, communications, nudges? How are you driving right behavior? Similarly, across product and across processes. So I think the moment you create that kind of a flywheel, I think, from a functional perspective, you've created a very strong foundational block.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, now we only have 5 minutes, so won't be able to cover all the topics here, but wanted to, before opening up for questions from the audience, just bring 2 examples, because we've been discussing a lot here about like best practices and how to address this. It's a very complex problem. And 2 examples here just to illustrate how big this could get. I've seen cases, for example, of like marketing campaigns where around like 40 to 60% of the new customers were actually all abusers, right? So like if you're able to address these things, you can really impact the growth and profitability of the company. So it's a really important thing to tackle. The second thing is sometimes we just think that, oh, it's just a person that's wanting to eat for free for some time, and they're like creating multiple accounts, etc., and using these coupons over and over. But sometimes this is actually organized crime, right? We saw cases of people that were like reaching out to restaurants and saying like, hey, I have this scheme here. It was actually a company, right, reaching out to these restaurants and saying like, I have this scheme here in which I know how to create, and I already control multiple accounts on this platform, and I can send you a bunch of orders using these coupons. You don't even need to prepare the order. You don't need to like do anything. Just accept these orders. We're gonna pay, etc. And then we split the profit from the coupons, because who's paying for the coupon is actually the platform. So these kind of things that were happening at scales of like hundreds and thousands and even tens of thousands of orders. So this could really impact your business. So it's important to take a look at.